She was homeless, he was a billionaire. A contract marriage was just the beginning. But what if the truth was more dangerous than love? Alexander Alex Coleman stood motionless in the dimly lit, wood-paneled office of Harold Bennett, the trusted family attorney. The room smelled of old leather and aged paper, a scent Alex had come to associate with his father's manipulative schemes. But nothing could have prepared him for the final twist in his father's will. Marry her. Alex's voice was a mixture of disbelief and quiet anger. His sharp blue eyes narrowed at Harold, who sat across the polished oak desk, a tattered copy of Alistair Coleman's will lying between them. Yes, Alex, Harold repeated, adjusting his glasses, his voice calm but weary. You must legally marry within 30 days of the will's reading, or the entire Coleman estate, including your controlling stake in Coleman Media Group, will be transferred to the National Persian Cat Preservation Society. Alex almost laughed. It would have been a joke if it wasn't a nightmare. The estate, worth hundreds of millions, and his father's media empire were all at stake, hinging on one ridiculous condition: a marriage within a month. This is madness, Alex muttered, pacing the room, the heels of his polished shoes clicking against the old hardwood floor. My father's gone mad, even from the grave. Harold sighed, his wrinkled hands resting on the armrests of his leather chair. Your father always believed in legacy, Alex. Family. Responsibility. He likely thought this would force you to find stability. Stability? Alex's voice rose. He wants to control me even after death. This isn't about stability, it's about power. It always was with him. The truth was, Alex had built his life on his father's teachings. Ambition, control, dominance. Those values had made him a billionaire, had placed him at the top of the media world, but they had also left him alone. His life was a series of business deals, empty parties, and meaningless flings. Trust was a commodity he had traded away long ago. Harold cleared his throat. Alex, this is not just about the money. Sinclair Media Group is already struggling. Your father's reckless investments in his later years left the company on the brink of bankruptcy. Without the inheritance, without the funds, Coleman Media could collapse within months. Alex knew Harold was right. For the first time in years, he felt a cold, sharp fear twisting in his chest. Losing the company would mean more than just financial loss. It would be a public humiliation, a scandal splashed across every headline. Coleman Empire crumbles. He leaned against the tall window, looking out at the bustling streets of Manhattan below. Cars honked, people rushed along the sidewalks, oblivious to the storm swirling inside this quiet office. I have to get married, he whispered, his voice barely audible. But to whom? Harold leaned forward. You could arrange a marriage of convenience, a simple contract. Someone who understands this is purely a business transaction. A contract wife. Alex let out a bitter chuckle. Exactly what my father would have wanted. Another pawn in his game. But even as he spoke, his mind began calculating, his instincts as a businessman kicking in. A contract marriage, quick, clean, without emotional entanglement, no risk of scandal. Just a signature on paper. Harold continued. You have 30 days, Alex. I would advise that you keep this matter discreet. The board must not sense your desperation. If they do, they will use it against you. Alex nodded, his expression cold, calculated. Understood. As he left the law office, stepping into the crisp autumn air of New York City, Alex felt a strange emptiness gnawing at him. He had always prided himself on control over his company, his image, his life. But now he was being forced to marry, not for love, not for happiness, but for survival. Driving back to his glass-walled penthouse overlooking Central Park, Alex tried to rationalize his decision. This was just another business deal, another acquisition. He would find a woman willing to play the role, pay her generously, and after a year, they would part ways. But deep down, as he gazed at the glittering city skyline, he felt a hollow ache, a sense that his life, his success, and his fortune were all a fragile illusion. He was a man who had everything, but nothing that truly mattered. The next few days became a whirlwind of cold calculations. Alex's assistant discreetly contacted several elite matchmaking agencies, but none could provide a candidate willing to enter such a strange, rushed arrangement without risking exposure. Trust was a currency Alex could no longer afford. Every night, Alex drove aimlessly through the city in his sleek black Bentley, the quiet hum of the engine a strange comfort. He passed through neighborhoods he had never visited before, narrow alleys, bustling night markets, run-down districts far from his world of wealth and power. It was during one of these aimless drives, under the pale yellow glow of a streetlight, that he saw her. Under a crumbling concrete bridge, a figure huddled against the cold. Rain drizzled down, tapping against the metal roof of his car, but she didn't move. Instead, she sat against the bridge pillar, wrapped in a thin, tattered coat, reading a book beneath the faint, flickering light. Alex's first instinct was to ignore her, just another soul lost in the city's darkness. But something about her struck him. Perhaps it was the way she protected the book, shielding it from the rain, or the way she seemed so intensely focused, so quietly defiant against the cold. He parked his car a few feet away and watched her for a moment, the engine still running. This was insane. What was he doing? But desperation has a way of making men bold, even reckless. Stepping out of the car, he approached her, his polished shoes clicking against the wet pavement. "Excuse me," he called out. The woman looked up, startled. Her face was pale, gaunt, framed by dark, tangled hair. But her eyes, a brilliant shade of blue, sharp and alert, met his with a mixture of suspicion and defiance. "Who are you?" she asked, clutching the book tighter. "I have a proposition," Alex said, his voice calm but urgent. "I need a wife." "Quickly. It's a business arrangement. You marry me for 1 year, and I'll pay you $100,000. The woman stared at him, stunned. Then she laughed. A dry, hollow laugh, filled with disbelief. "This is a joke, right?" she whispered. "No joke," Alex replied, his expression serious. "It's an offer, a contract. And I assure you, I keep my promises." The woman studied him for a long moment, the rain dancing around them, the city noise a distant murmur. "My name is Emily Parker," she finally said, her voice steady but weary. "And I have 2 conditions." Alex raised an eyebrow. "Name them." "First, I keep my book. Second, you help my friend Clara. She's sick, and she needs medicine." Alex nodded without hesitation. "Deal." Emily reached out, her cold, rain-soaked hand grasping his. "Then you've got yourself a wife, Mr. Coleman." But as they stood beneath the rain-soaked bridge, neither of them realized that this cold, calculated contract would become the beginning of a journey they could never have imagined. The next morning, under the dull grey sky of Manhattan, Alexander Coleman and Emily Parker stood in the cold, unadorned hallway of City Hall. The air smelled of damp stone and faded disinfectant. The only sound was the soft rustling of papers and the quiet murmur of clerks processing endless documents. Alex adjusted his crisp, tailored navy suit, his expression a mask of calm indifference. Beside him, Emily stood in a simple, off-white dress he had bought her, clean, modest, but far from the designer gowns that usually graced the women in his world. Her dark hair was neatly combed, but her blue eyes, sharp, intense, seemed to absorb everything around her, as though she were capturing it in her memory. "Are you sure about this?" Harold Bennett, the family lawyer, asked, his voice low but firm. His thinning grey hair and weary eyes reflected the weight of years spent managing the Coleman family's legal affairs. "I don't have a choice," Alex replied, his voice cool. This is a business arrangement, nothing more. Emily glanced at him, but said nothing. In the past 24 hours, her life had transformed from one of desperation and cold nights beneath a bridge to standing in line for a marriage certificate with one of the city's wealthiest men. But even now, she couldn't decide whether this was a miracle or another cruel twist of fate. "Names, please." The clerk's voice cut through the silence. "Alexander Coleman," Alex answered, his tone confident, as though he were signing a business contract. "Emily Parker," she added quietly. The clerk looked up, raising an eyebrow. A man in a designer suit beside a woman in a plain dress, her face pale but intelligent, her hands clutching a worn paperback book as though it were a treasure. But she didn't ask questions. The city saw stranger things every day. "Sign here," the clerk instructed, sliding 2 forms across the counter. Alex signed with the smooth, elegant stroke of a businessman accustomed to making deals. Emily hesitated, staring at the paper for a brief moment before pressing the pen against it, her signature small but clear. "Congratulations," the clerk said, her voice devoid of enthusiasm. "You are now legally married." Harold offered a polite but unenthusiastic smile. "That's it, Alex. The marriage certificate will be processed within 48 hours. You now meet the condition of your father's will." Alex's jaw tightened slightly, but he forced a polite nod. "Thank you, Harold." He turned to Emily, gesturing toward the exit. "Let's go." Their walk to the car was silent. The autumn wind swept through the bustling city streets, rustling the leaves and sending a chill through the air. Emily's fingers tightened around her book, a quiet anchor in this whirlwind of uncertainty. The sleek, black Bentley awaited them, its driver standing by, holding the door open. Emily hesitated for a second before stepping inside. The leather seats were soft, the air warm and faintly scented with expensive cologne. A world far removed from the cold, wet streets she had known. Alex slid in beside her, his expression unreadable. He pulled out his phone, scrolling through messages, already immersed in his world of business and power. Emily stared out the window, the towering skyscrapers passing by like silent witnesses. They arrived at Alex's penthouse, a gleaming glass tower overlooking Central Park. Emily's breath caught as they stepped into the vast marble lobby, the golden chandeliers casting a warm glow on the polished floors. The elevator ride to the top floor was suffocatingly quiet. Emily's reflection stared back at her from the mirrored walls, a reminder of how out of place she was in this world of wealth and perfection. When the elevator doors slid open, Alex led her into the penthouse. A sprawling modern space filled with sleek furniture and floor-to-ceiling windows, showcasing the breathtaking view of the city. But despite its beauty, there was a cold, sterile emptiness to it. "This will be your room," Alex said, opening a door to a spacious guest suite. A plush bed, a walk-in closet, a private bathroom. It was larger than most apartments. "Thank you," Emily whispered, stepping inside, feeling both overwhelmed and isolated. "Your weekly allowance will be deposited into your account," Alex continued, his voice businesslike. "You are free to use the kitchen and the living area, but I ask that you respect my privacy. This is a business arrangement, Miss Parker." "Nothing more." "Understood," Emily replied, her voice calm but firm. "And remember," he added, his tone slightly softer, "if you need anything, within reason, you can let me know." Emily nodded, watching him leave the room, his footsteps fading down the hallway. When the door closed, she released a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. The silence enveloped her. For a moment, she simply stood there, letting the surreal reality of her situation sink in. A day ago, she had been reading beneath a bridge, with nothing but a tattered coat and a worn book. Now she stood in a room filled with luxury, but with walls just as cold as the city streets. Emily set her book on the nightstand and sat on the edge of the bed. The mattress was soft, the sheets cool and smooth beneath her fingers. But comfort meant nothing without a sense of belonging. She wandered toward the tall window, gazing out at the glittering city below. Somewhere out there, Clara was struggling to survive, her friend's health deteriorating in the shadows of this city's wealth. A pang of guilt twisted in Emily's chest. She had to keep her promise. Her gaze shifted to the sleek, modern bookshelf beside the window. Rows of hardcovers with gilded spines lined the shelves, their titles a mix of business strategy, economics, and biographies of great leaders. Typical for a man like Alex, but there, nestled between two thick volumes, she noticed something different, a classic novel, The Great Gatsby. It seemed out of place among the sterile rows of financial wisdom. Emily reached out, her fingers brushing against the cover. She pulled it from the shelf, the weight of it familiar, comforting. She opened the book, and a small note slipped out, fluttering to the floor. Picking it up, she read the elegant, handwritten script. For the dreamers who lose everything, but find their truth. A strange warmth spread through her chest, a reminder that even in this cold, calculated contract, there might still be something human beneath it all. She set the note back inside the book, a small smile touching her lips. If this was to be her life for the next year, she would make the most of it. But even as she stood there, surrounded by luxury, a quiet determination began to burn in her heart. This wasn't just a deal. This was a chance to rebuild, to survive, and perhaps, just perhaps, to find herself again. Days turned into weeks, and Emily Parker's life became a strange, quiet routine within the cold, glittering walls of Alexander Coleman's penthouse. It was a world of wealth and silence, vast marble floors that echoed her footsteps, tall glass windows overlooking the endless sprawl of Manhattan, and a constant, suffocating emptiness. Alex was rarely home. His world was one of boardrooms, press conferences, and late-night strategy meetings. He would leave each morning in a perfectly tailored suit, his expression composed, his voice steady as he gave orders through his Bluetooth earpiece, and he would return late at night, sometimes glancing at her with a polite nod, but rarely speaking more than a few words. Emily's world was different. The guest suite she was given was spacious, with a bed so soft it felt like sinking into a cloud. There was a walk-in closet filled with new clothes Alex had arranged for her, elegant but modest, all in neutral colors, a world away from the worn, muddy coat she had worn beneath the bridge. But the emptiness of the penthouse pressed against her like an invisible weight. Each morning, she would wake to the soft glow of sunlight filtering through the tall windows, but the silence was absolute. No laughter, no warmth, just the hum of the air conditioning and the distant murmur of traffic far below. At first, she kept to herself, spending most of her time reading in her room. The bookshelf beside the window became her sanctuary. Novels, poetry, philosophy. But as the days passed, she grew restless. The penthouse was a cage, no matter how gilded. One rainy afternoon, while Alex was at work, Emily wandered into the vast, minimalist kitchen. The stainless steel appliances gleamed, untouched, as though they were part of a showroom. Curious, she opened the refrigerator. Rows of bottled water, neatly stacked imported cheeses, and pre-packaged gourmet meals. Everything was perfectly organized, but it felt lifeless. "I suppose even wealth can feel empty," she murmured to herself, a wry smile touching her lips. As she prepared a simple sandwich, she heard the faint click of the front door. Alex was home early, an unusual occurrence. He stepped into the kitchen, pausing when he saw her at the counter, the surprise clear in his eyes. "You're cooking?" he asked, as though the idea was foreign. Emily laughed, a soft, genuine sound. "I wouldn't call this cooking, just trying to make something edible." Alex's expression softened slightly. There are private chefs available, you know. You don't need to do that yourself. I know, she replied, taking a bite, but sometimes doing something with your own hands helps you feel real. He didn't respond, but his gaze lingered on her for a moment longer than usual. Then, as though catching himself, he turned away, pulling his phone from his pocket and resuming a low, businesslike conversation with someone on the other end. Emily watched him, a quiet curiosity growing in her chest. Beneath his polished exterior, beneath the cold, efficient mask he wore, there was something else, a loneliness, a hollowness she recognized all too well. As the weeks passed, Alex began to notice her more, not because he wanted to, or so he told himself, but because she was simply there. In the quiet moments of his carefully controlled life, she was a presence he couldn't ignore. Sometimes he would return home late, exhausted, and find her reading in the living room, her dark hair cascading over one shoulder, her blue eyes focused intently on the pages. Once he passed by and glanced at the title, War and Peace. Not exactly light reading. "Do you read every day?" he asked one evening, pausing in the hallway. Emily looked up, surprised. "I try to. It's one of the few things I can always turn to, no matter what." Alex leaned against the doorframe, his gaze curious. "Why that one?" "Because it's about people who change," she replied, closing the book but keeping her finger on the page. "It's about struggle, pain, love, and how life can break you, but also make you stronger." Alex's expression flickered, a hint of something she couldn't quite read. "I never had much time for books." "No," Emily smiled gently. "You've been too busy building empires." A faint smile tugged at the corner of his mouth, but it disappeared as quickly as it came. "Empires are fragile," he muttered, almost to himself. The conversation ended there, but it left an echo in Emily's mind. The more she observed Alex, the more she saw the cracks beneath his perfect exterior. The way his jaw tightened when he thought no one was watching, the way his voice grew cold when he spoke to his executives, the way he would stare out at the city, a vast empire beneath him, yet his eyes seemed so distant. One night, as the rain tapped against the tall glass windows, Emily sat curled up on the living room sofa, flipping through an old poetry book she had found in the library. The words were comforting, a reminder of a world beyond this lonely tower. Then she heard it, the muffled sound of something breaking. Startled, she set the book aside and followed the sound down the dark hallway. The light beneath the door of Alex's study was on, and as she approached, she heard his voice, sharp, angry. "You told me the deal was secure," he snapped. "Now you're telling me they're pulling out?" There was a crash, the sound of glass shattering. Emily hesitated, her hand hovering just inches from the door. But then she heard his voice again, lower this time, filled with a quiet desperation she hadn't expected. "I don't care what it takes. Fix it, or we're done." Silence followed. Emily's heart raced. A part of her knew she should walk away, return to her room, and pretend she hadn't heard anything, but something in her wouldn't allow it. She knocked softly. "Alex?" she called, her voice gentle. There was a pause, then the door opened. Alex stood there, his tie loosened, his suit jacket discarded. His usually composed face was pale, his jaw tense. "What do you want?" he asked, his tone sharper than he intended. I heard a noise. I wanted to make sure you were okay." "I'm fine," he muttered, turning away, but she saw the broken glass on the floor near his desk, a shattered whiskey glass, amber liquid staining the expensive carpet. "Doesn't look fine," she whispered. Alex clenched his fists, struggling to regain his composure. "It's none of your business." "Maybe not," Emily said softly, "but you look like you could use someone to talk to." For a moment, he stood there, his back to her, his shoulders tense. Then he let out a bitter laugh. "Talk," To you? He shook his head. This is a business arrangement, Emily. You're here because I needed a wife for a year. Nothing more? Maybe that's true, she replied, her voice steady. But I'm still a person, Alex. And so are you. Silence settled between them. Finally, without another word, he stepped past her, disappearing down the hallway toward his bedroom. Emily remained in the doorway of his study, her gaze falling on the shattered glass, the dark stain on the carpet. She was just a contract wife, living in a penthouse of glass and steel. But she could see the fractures beneath his polished surface, and despite herself, she felt a quiet ache for the man who had everything, but nothing that truly mattered. Emily Parker's life within the glass confines of Alexander Coleman's penthouse settled into a quiet, uneasy rhythm. Alex remained distant, a figure of authority and calculation, a man whose world was built on power and precision. Yet beneath his polished exterior, Emily had begun to see the cracks, the weariness in his eyes, the tension in his voice, the nights he spent staring out at the city's glittering skyline with a hollow gaze. But it wasn't just his personal struggles that weighed on him. Alex's empire, Coleman Media Group, was in trouble. Emily had overheard enough of his tense phone calls to understand that a storm was brewing. Something about a lawsuit, a media scandal threatening to shatter the company's already fragile reputation. At first, she told herself it was none of her business. She was here on a contract, a wife in name only, paid to play a role. But the more she listened, the more she watched him struggle, the more she felt that familiar spark stirring within her, the instinct of a journalist, the need to uncover the truth. One evening, as Alex stormed out of his study after yet another heated call, Emily found herself alone in the grand, dimly lit room. The faint scent of whiskey lingered in the air, a half-empty glass abandoned on the marble desk. Papers lay scattered across the polished surface, some marked with red ink, others hastily crumpled. Her gaze fell on one document, a legal brief from a powerful politician suing the New York Herald, a subsidiary of Coleman Media Group. The accusations were severe: defamation, false reporting, and reputational damage. But something didn't sit right with Emily. Her fingers traced the edges of the papers. The accusations were too perfect, the evidence too neatly presented. It was as though someone had crafted a story with just enough detail to be convincing, but not enough to be real. Her instincts took over. Emily spent the next few days quietly examining everything she could find: news articles, online reports, court documents. Alex had warned her to stay out of his business, but she couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Late one night, as she sat in the glow of the tall library window, her laptop balanced on her knees, she discovered it: a connection. The politician suing the Herald was closely tied to a media conglomerate owned by none other than Charles Hawthorne, Alex's ruthless rival. The same Charles Hawthorne who had built his empire by destroying competitors, manipulating stories, and silencing dissent. Emily's heart raced. This wasn't just a lawsuit. It was a trap, a carefully orchestrated attack designed to cripple Coleman Media and force Alex into a desperate sale. The door to the library swung open suddenly, and Alex stepped in, his expression dark and stormy. He paused, surprised to see her there, but his gaze quickly shifted to the papers and laptops scattered around her. "What do you think you're doing?" he demanded, his voice cold. Emily stood, clutching the laptop to her chest. "I know you told me not to interfere, but I couldn't just sit by and watch. This lawsuit, it's a setup. Charles Hawthorne is behind it. He's using the politician as a pawn to bring down your company." Alex's jaw tightened, but there was a flicker of something in his eyes. Doubt, curiosity, maybe even hope. "You don't know what you're talking about." "I do," she insisted, her voice steady. "Look at the connections." The politician has no history of suing media companies, but suddenly he's willing to take the New York Herald to court for millions. And all the evidence against the Herald? It's too perfect. It's a setup. Alex's cold mask faltered. Even if that's true, what can I do? The board is already questioning my leadership. The company's stock is plummeting. If I make a move without proof, it will only make things worse. Then let me help you, Emily said, stepping forward. I used to be a journalist. A good one. I know how to investigate, how to find the truth. Let me look into this. He laughed, a bitter, disbelieving sound. You? A journalist? You were living under a bridge. Emily's cheeks flushed, but she stood her ground. Yes, I was, because people like Charles Hawthorne ruined my life. Because I trusted the wrong people, and I lost everything. But I haven't lost my instincts, and I can help you. If you'll let me. Alex stared at her, his expression unreadable. For a long moment, the only sound was the distant hum of the city outside. Then he stepped forward, his gaze locking with hers. Fine. You want to play detective? Prove it. But if you're wrong, if you make this worse, I will hold you responsible. I won't be wrong, Emily whispered, a quiet determination burning in her eyes. The next morning, Emily transformed. Gone was the quiet, reserved woman who drifted silently through the penthouse. In her place was a sharp, focused investigator. Methodical, relentless. She spent hours poring over documents, tracing connections, and making discreet calls to old contacts in the journalism world. Alex watched her with a mixture of skepticism and reluctant admiration. She seemed like a different person, her blue eyes sharp, her voice steady, her fingers moving across the keyboard with a confidence that seemed out of place in his world of luxury and silence. What exactly did you do before I found you? He asked one evening, unable to hide his curiosity. I was a journalist, Emily replied without looking up, an investigative journalist. I exposed corruption, uncovered scandals. I used to believe in the power of the truth. What happened? He pressed. She paused, her gaze distant. I trusted the wrong person. My work was destroyed, my name ruined, and I lost everything. Charles Hawthorne? Alex guessed. Her jaw tightened. He was part of it, but there were others. A quiet silence settled between them, a silence that spoke of regret and anger, of pain and betrayal. But Emily didn't let it consume her. She had a mission now, and she wasn't going to let her past stop her. As the days passed, her investigation deepened. She uncovered emails between the politician and Hawthorne's associates, hidden financial transactions, and most importantly, a series of manipulated documents that had been used to frame the New York Herald. But with each revelation, the danger grew. Emily received a series of anonymous messages, threats warning her to stop. Once, she returned to the penthouse to find her room had been searched, her notes scattered. Someone was watching. Alex's demeanor changed. He became more protective, more involved in the investigation. He insisted on walking her through the penthouse security protocols, even assigning additional guards without telling her. At first, she thought he was just protecting his investment, his company, his wealth. But the way his voice softened when he spoke to her, the way his eyes lingered on her when he thought she wasn't looking, told her otherwise. One night, as they stood side by side in the study, reviewing the evidence she had gathered, Alex placed a hand on her shoulder. "Thank you, Emily," he whispered, his voice low and sincere. I didn't think you would actually help me, or that you even could." She smiled, a soft, sad smile. Sometimes it takes losing everything to realize what really matters. For the first time since their strange, cold contract began, Emily felt a sense of purpose. And for the first time in years, Alex Coleman felt something he hadn't known he was missing. Hope. Emily Parker had always believed that the truth was a double-edged sword, a weapon that could save lives, but also destroy them. As she delved deeper into the web of deceit threatening Coleman Media Group, she felt the sharp edge of that truth pressing against her own life. Her investigation into the lawsuit against the New York Herald revealed a chilling pattern. Manipulated documents, false testimonies, and secret payments linked directly to Charles Hawthorne. The more she uncovered, the more she recognized the sinister fingerprints of a master manipulator, the same man who had once destroyed her career. But she didn't dare tell Alex the full truth. Not yet. He knew her as Emily Parker, his contract wife, a woman plucked from the shadows of the city. He didn't know she was once Phoenix, the fearless investigative journalist who had exposed some of the most powerful figures in the industry and paid the price. Late one night, as the city lights shimmered beyond the penthouse windows, Emily's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Stop digging, Phoenix, or you'll burn again." Her heart pounded. Her fingers trembled slightly, but she forced herself to remain calm. This wasn't the first time she had been threatened, but it was the first time in years that someone had called her by that name. The name she had tried to bury. Emily's thoughts raced. Charles Hawthorne knew. He knew she was investigating. He knew who she was, and if he knew, then she and Alex were in far more danger than she had imagined. The next morning she tried to focus, hiding her anxiety beneath a mask of calm determination. She spent hours at her makeshift office in the penthouse's library, reviewing documents, tracing financial records, and reaching out to old contacts. Journalists she trusted, people who might help her uncover the truth. But the walls seemed to be closing in. Her calls went unanswered. One of her old sources sent a panicked message. "They know I talked to you. Don't contact me again." Her mind raced with questions. How far would Hawthorne go to silence her? Would he turn his attention to Alex next? Did he already know they were working together? That evening, Alex returned home early. His usually calm, composed demeanor was replaced by something else, a quiet urgency. He stepped into the library, where Emily sat surrounded by stacks of papers. "Emily, we need to talk," he said, his voice tense. "What's wrong?" she asked, trying to mask the fear in her voice. "I've been receiving reports, threats. And not just against the company, against me, against us." He hesitated, his blue eyes fixed on her. "I think Hawthorne knows we're trying to expose him." Emily's heart raced, but she forced herself to remain steady. "He does, and it's worse than you think." Alex's expression darkened. "What do you mean?" She stood, the weight of her secret pressing against her. "Alex, there's something I haven't told you. Something you deserve to know." "Then tell me," he whispered, stepping closer. His voice was calm, but there was a flicker of fear in his eyes. She took a deep breath. "My name isn't just Emily Parker. I was Phoenix." He stared at her, confused. "Phoenix? A journalist, an investigative journalist. Years ago, I exposed a massive corruption scandal involving powerful corporations. One of those corporations was owned by Charles Hawthorne. When I published the story, I became a target. Hawthorne destroyed me. My career, my reputation, everything. I lost my job, my home. I became a ghost. I thought I could start over, but he never stopped watching." Alex's jaw clenched. "You were the one who exposed the Omnicorp scandal, the one who disappeared." "Yes," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I thought if I stayed hidden, if I stayed quiet, I could survive. But now I'm right back in his crosshairs." Silence filled the room. Alex turned away, his hands gripping the back of a leather chair, his knuckles white. "You knew all of this, and you still got involved?" he asked, his voice low, filled with a quiet anger. "I didn't have a choice," Emily replied. "I saw what was happening to your company. I recognized Hawthorne's tactics, and I couldn't just watch you be destroyed." He laughed bitterly. "Couldn't just watch. You've put yourself and me in his sights." "I know," she whispered, tears stinging her eyes. "And I'm sorry, but I also know how he works. I can help you fight him, But you have to trust me. Trust you? He spun around, his eyes blazing. How can I trust you when I didn't even know who you were? Emily's shoulders sagged. You don't have to trust me, but you can't fight this alone. Not against him. Alex stared at her, his expression a storm of anger, fear, and something else. Something closer to betrayal. For a long moment, the only sound was the faint hum of the city beyond the glass walls. Then, without another word, he turned and left the room, the door swinging shut behind him. Emily sank into the leather chair, her hands trembling. She had told him the truth, or most of it. But instead of feeling relief, she felt exposed, vulnerable, like a cornered animal. The next few days were a tense silence. Alex barely spoke to her. He would leave early, return late, and avoid her gaze whenever they crossed paths. The distance between them was palpable, a chasm she feared could never be bridged, but despite his coldness, he hadn't forced her to leave. He hadn't torn up their contract. He hadn't cast her back into the streets. One rainy night, as she sat alone in the library, staring blankly at her laptop, the door swung open. Alex stood there, his suit damp from the rain, his expression unreadable. I've thought about it, he began, his voice steady but strained. And I hate that you kept this from me. I hate that you lied, but I also know you're right. We can't fight Hawthorne alone. Emily's breath caught. Alex, I've contacted Harold. We're taking your evidence to the board. We're going to expose Hawthorne publicly, but we have to be ready. If this goes wrong, it could destroy us both. I understand, she whispered. Do you? He stepped forward, his gaze fierce. You need to be prepared, Emily. This isn't just about the company anymore. It's about your life. Our lives. I know the risks, she replied, a quiet determination in her voice. But I won't let him win. Not again. Alex stared at her for a long moment. Then his expression softened. You're not who I thought you were. Neither are you, she replied, a hint of a smile touching her lips. He sighed, a weary smile breaking through his guarded mask. I suppose we're both full of surprises. For the first time since their strange, cold marriage began, Emily felt something shift between them. No longer just a contract wife, no longer just a stranger in his penthouse, she was his ally, a woman with a shared purpose, a shared fight. And as they stood together, beneath the dim light of the library, their shadows stretching across the marble floor, she felt a spark of something else, something that felt a little like hope. Alexander Coleman was a man who had built his life on control, controlling his company, controlling his image, controlling the people around him. But ever since Emily Parker, or rather Phoenix, had stepped into his life, that control had been slipping away. Now, as the rain tapped against the tall glass windows of his penthouse, Alex stood in his study, staring at the skyline of Manhattan. But his mind was elsewhere, on the looming battle with Charles Hawthorne, on the fragile alliance he had forged with Emily, and on the quiet, growing warmth he felt whenever he looked at her. He was furious with her, for keeping secrets, for bringing danger to his door. But he was also grateful. Without her, he would never have known the true extent of Hawthorne's plot. Without her, he would have been blindsided, his company torn apart, his reputation ruined, but most of all he was drawn to her. The quiet resilience in her eyes, the fierce determination that had brought her from the cold streets to standing beside him, fighting against one of the most powerful men in the city. He didn't know what he felt for her, but he knew it was more than just gratitude. Alex? Her voice broke through his thoughts. He turned, finding Emily standing in the doorway, her dark hair loose around her shoulders, her blue eyes filled with that same sharp, determined light. We've connected the final piece, she said, holding up a printed email. This confirms it. Hawthorne has been funneling money to the politician suing the New York Herald. He's financing the entire lawsuit. He's trying to cripple your company so he can buy it for a fraction of its value. Alex took the paper, his jaw tightening as he read the damning evidence. This is it. This is what we need to take him down. Not yet, Emily warned. We need to be smart. If we expose him without a plan, he'll bury us. We need to present this to the board, to the press, in a way that he can't deny. Alex's gaze met hers, and for a moment, the cold, calculating businessman in him gave way to something else, a quiet, sincere admiration. You've been right about everything so far. Tell me what we need to do. Emily's heart skipped a beat. The Alex she had first met, arrogant, dismissive, distant, was gone. In his place stood a man who listened, who trusted her, and it terrified her. First, we gather everything. Every document, every email, every financial transaction, she began, her voice steady. We need a complete picture of Hawthorne's scheme. Then we bring it to the board, but not just them. We need to bring in the press. The more public this is, the harder it will be for him to bury it. Agreed, Alex nodded. And I want you beside me when we do it. Her eyes widened. Me? Yes, you, he said, stepping closer. This is your investigation. You're the one who exposed him. The board needs to see that. They need to see who you really are. Emily hesitated. The thought of standing before the board, of revealing herself as Phoenix, sent a chill down her spine. But she saw the determination in Alex's eyes, and she felt it in herself as well. All right, she whispered. But we need to be prepared. Hawthorne won't just sit back and let this happen. I know, Alex said, a quiet fire burning in his gaze. That's why I've arranged for security. From now on, you're never alone. He stepped past her, pressing a button on his phone. Moments later, a pair of stern-looking security guards arrived at the door. This is James and Riley, Alex introduced. They'll be with you wherever you go. I don't want you stepping outside this penthouse without them. Emily tried to hide her unease. Is that really necessary? Yes, Alex insisted. If Hawthorne knows who you are, and he does, then he won't hesitate to come after you. Or use you to get to me. Fine, she agreed, trying to steady her nerves. But we have to keep moving. We can't let fear stop us. The days that followed were a whirlwind of strategy and secrecy. Emily and Alex worked together, side by side, transforming the library into a makeshift war room. Documents covered the walls, strings of red thread connected names, dates, and locations. A chaotic map of Hawthorne's conspiracy. Emily's experience as an investigative journalist shone through. She tracked down sources, pulled up archived articles, uncovered hidden connections that even Alex hadn't considered. And Alex, for his part, used his business acumen to secure the support of key board members, convincing them to stand by him when the truth came out. But as their alliance grew stronger, so did the quiet, unspoken bond between them. Late nights spent poring over evidence turned into quiet conversations over coffee, quiet smiles shared across the room. Alex found himself watching her when she wasn't looking, captivated by the way her sharp blue eyes danced with focus, the way her lips curved into a small, determined smile when she uncovered another clue. And Emily found herself drawn to him as well, not just the powerful CEO, but the man beneath the polished exterior. The man who had stood by her, even when he didn't understand her. The man who had risked his reputation to trust her. One rainy night, as they sat across from each other, surrounded by stacks of documents, Emily leaned back, rubbing her tired eyes. You should rest, Alex said, his voice softer now, almost gentle. So should you, she replied with a faint smile. But we both know that's not going to happen. He chuckled, a warm, genuine sound she had rarely heard from him. I suppose not. For a moment, they simply looked at each other, the rain tapping against the glass, the distant glow of the city casting a soft light across the room. Thank you, Emily, Alex whispered, for everything. She hesitated, her heart pounding. You don't have to thank me. I do, he insisted, his gaze holding hers. You've done more than just save my company. You've reminded me what it feels like to care about something, to care about someone. Her breath caught. Alex! But before she could say anything more, the door swung open. James, one of the security guards, stepped in, his expression tense. Sir, we have a situation, he said. Your office. Someone broke in. Alex shot to his feet. Was anything taken? Not yet, but the place was ransacked. Whoever did it was looking for something. Emily's heart raced. Hawthorne! He's making his move. Alex's expression hardened. We can't let him get ahead of us. Emily, we're going public. Tomorrow. But the evidence... We haven't finished. We have enough, Alex interrupted, his voice fierce. We can't wait for him to strike again. We take this to the board. We take this to the press, and we end him. Emily's gaze met his, a quiet understanding passing between them. This was it. The moment they had been building toward... All right, she whispered. Let's bring him down. That night, as the rain poured against the city, Emily lay awake in the darkness, her mind racing with 1,000 thoughts. Fear, excitement, and something else. Something she didn't dare name. In the room down the hall, Alex stared at the ceiling, his mind just as restless. He thought of the battle ahead, the danger they faced, and the woman who had become his ally, his partner, and perhaps something more. But tomorrow would decide everything. Tomorrow, they would step into the light. Together. The next morning dawned grey and heavy, a thick blanket of clouds hanging over Manhattan like a silent warning. Rain streaked the tall glass windows of the penthouse, casting pale, watery shadows across the marble floors. Emily Parker stood at the window, her reflection a faint silhouette against the stormy skyline. Her fingers brushed against the cool glass, her mind racing. Today was the day. Today she and Alex would take everything they had uncovered and present it to the board of Coleman Media Group and to the press. It was a gamble, a desperate play against Charles Hawthorne, the ruthless media tycoon who had orchestrated a trap to destroy them. Emily, Alex's voice cut through the silence, pulling her back to the present. She turned, finding him standing in the doorway of the living room, already dressed in a sharp, tailored suit. But his expression was anything but calm. Beneath the polished exterior, she saw the tension in his jaw, the quiet fear in his eyes. "Are you ready?" he asked, trying to sound steady. "As ready as I'll ever be," she replied, offering a faint smile. "You don't have to do this," he said, his voice softer now. "If things go wrong, if Hawthorne retaliates, you could be in real danger." "I know," she whispered, "but I'm not running. Not this time." For a moment, a quiet understanding passed between them. Then Alex nodded, his expression hardening. "All right, let's end this." They stepped out of the penthouse, escorted by James and Riley, the two security guards Alex had assigned to protect Emily. The ride to the Coleman Media Group headquarters was tense and silent. Rain drummed against the car's roof, the city a blur of grey and silver beyond the windows. Emily's heart pounded with each passing block. Memories flashed through her mind, the dark, rainy streets she had once wandered, the cold concrete beneath the bridge where Alex had found her, the cold, calculating contract that had brought them together. And now, they were walking into a battle that could destroy everything they had built. When they arrived, the building was already bustling. Board members filed into the grand conference room, their expressions a mix of curiosity and concern. The whispers began the moment Alex and Emily stepped inside. "Who is she? Isn't that his wife? The one no one knows? Why is she here?" Alex ignored the murmurs, his expression calm, composed. But Emily could feel his hand lightly touch the small of her back, a quiet reassurance, a reminder that they were in this together. At the front of the room, Harold Bennett, the family lawyer, stood waiting. He glanced at Emily with a faint smile, a silent show of support. Then he cleared his throat. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us on such short notice," he began. "Mr. Coleman has something important to share with all of you." Alex stepped forward, his gaze sweeping across the room. Over the past few months, Coleman Media Group has been facing a crisis, a lawsuit, a scandal that has threatened to destroy our reputation and our future. Murmurs rippled through the room. "But what you don't know," he continued, his voice steady, "is that this entire crisis is a setup, a trap orchestrated by our competitor, Charles Hawthorne, and we have the proof." The murmurs grew louder. A few board members exchanged shocked glances, but Alex didn't stop. "I didn't discover this on my own," he admitted. "In fact, I was blind to the truth until someone showed me. Someone who has been risking everything to protect this company. And me." He turned to Emily, his gaze softening. "Emily Parker, or as some of you may know her, Phoenix." A stunned silence filled the room. Emily stepped forward, her heart pounding but her voice steady. "Years ago, I was an investigative journalist," she began. "I exposed corruption, I uncovered secrets, but I also made enemies. One of those enemies was Charles Hawthorne. He destroyed my career, ruined my life, but he didn't destroy my instinct for the truth." She held up the stack of documents they had prepared. "This lawsuit against the New York Herald is a lie, a carefully crafted trap designed to cripple this company so that Hawthorne can buy it for a fraction of its value." She began presenting the evidence, the emails, the financial transactions, the secret meetings. The room fell silent, the board members leaning forward, their faces pale with shock. "This is impossible," one of them whispered. "Hawthorne wouldn't dare." "He would," Alex interrupted, "and he did. But we have the chance to stop him, to expose him for what he is. But only if we stand together." For a moment, there was only silence. Then one of the senior board members stood. "I believe them. I've seen Hawthorne's tactics before. We cannot allow this to happen." Another member nodded. "We need to go public, take this to the press, make it impossible for him to bury." Alex's shoulders relaxed slightly, a faint smile breaking through his tension. He turned to Emily, and she felt a rush of relief. They weren't alone. But just as hope began to take hold, the door to the conference room burst open. A tall, silver-haired man strode in, his eyes cold, his smile sharp. "Am I interrupting?" Charles Hawthorne's voice was smooth, confident. "I heard there was a meeting. Thought I'd drop by." Alex's jaw clenched. "You're not welcome here, Hawthorne." "Oh, but I think I am," Hawthorne sneered. "Especially since I have a few things to share with all of you." He reached into his briefcase, pulling out a thick folder. "You see, I've been doing some digging of my own, and it seems your wife is quite the interesting character." He flipped open the folder, revealing a series of photographs, grainy images of Emily beneath the bridge, wandering the rain-soaked streets, her face hidden beneath a hood. "Your wife, Mr. Coleman," Hawthorne continued, "is a homeless vagrant, a nobody, a fraud." "And you want us to believe her wild accusations?" The room erupted in whispers. Alex stepped forward, his voice like steel. "You think that changes anything? Everything she's uncovered is real. Your scheme is exposed." Hawthorne laughed. "Exposed? To who? These desperate fools?" He gestured at the board. "I have lawyers, friends in high places. You think they'll believe the word of a homeless woman?" Emily's hands trembled. She saw the doubt in the board members' faces, the fear, but she refused to back down. "I may have been homeless," she said, stepping forward, her voice clear. "But that doesn't make me a liar. I was a journalist. I fought for the truth. And I'm fighting for it now." Is that so? Hawthorne smirked. Then let's see how you fight when I take everything from you. Again. But before he could continue, a voice cut through the room. You won't be taking anything, Harold Bennett announced, stepping forward. Because we have already contacted the press. They are outside this building waiting to hear the truth, and I have just sent them the entire file of evidence. Hawthorne's smirk vanished. You're finished, Alex said, his voice calm, his gaze fierce. You can try to bury us, but the truth is out, and this time you won't be able to silence it. Hawthorne's face twisted with rage. This isn't over, Coleman. Not by a long shot. He stormed out, slamming the door behind him. For a moment, the room was silent. Then a cheer erupted from the board. Alex turned to Emily, a triumphant smile on his face. We did it, he whispered. But Emily felt a chill run down her spine. They had won this battle, but the war with Hawthorne was far from over. The news broke like a tidal wave, sweeping across the city and beyond. Charles Hawthorne, the ruthless media tycoon, the man who had built an empire on secrets and manipulation, was exposed. His name flashed across every major news channel, his face plastered on front pages, his reputation crumbling beneath the weight of the truth. Alex Coleman and Emily Parker stood at the center of the storm, their faces captured in headlines. Truth exposed, Coleman media triumphs over Hawthorne's deceit. For days, the press hounded them, reporters clamoring for statements, the phones at Coleman Media Group ringing off the hook. But even as the world celebrated their victory, Emily felt no relief. Beneath the surface of the triumph, a quiet dread gnawed at her. Charles Hawthorne was not a man who simply accepted defeat. He was a man who struck back, and she knew they hadn't seen the last of him. One rainy evening, as Emily stood by the tall windows of the penthouse, watching the city lights shimmer through the mist, she felt the familiar cold weight of fear pressing against her. Alex had gone to the office, meeting with the board to stabilize the company in the wake of the scandal. She was alone, or at least, she thought she was. Her phone buzzed. A text message from an unknown number. You think you've won? You think you're safe? You're not. Not you. Not him. Her hands trembled, but she forced herself to remain calm. She immediately called Alex. Alex, it's him. Hawthorne, he's threatening us. Silence. Then his voice, steady but tense. I'll be home soon. Don't open the door for anyone. Don't answer any calls you don't recognize. But even as he spoke, a faint, distant dread filled Emily's chest. Hawthorne wouldn't just send threats, he would act, and he wouldn't strike directly. He would strike where it hurt the most. An hour later, the penthouse door swung open, and Alex stepped in, his expression grim. He crossed the room, pulling her into a tight embrace. I won't let him hurt you, he whispered. I know, she whispered back, clinging to him. But he's not just coming after me. He's coming after us. Everything we've built. Alex pulled back, his blue-grey eyes meeting hers. Then we fight. Together. But as the days passed, the weight of that fight grew heavier. Hawthorne's retaliation was swift and brutal. Anonymous articles appeared online, accusing Emily of being a fraud, a con artist who had manipulated Alex for money and power. A fabricated witness claimed she had seduced her way into his life. The board of Coleman Media Group grew restless, whispers of doubt spreading like wildfire. Some suggested that Alex should distance himself from her. A quiet divorce, a press release claiming they had parted on good terms. But Alex refused. She's the reason we survived this, he told them. And I won't abandon her. Emily felt a mix of gratitude and guilt. He was risking everything for her, his reputation, his company, his own safety. But it didn't end there. One evening, as they returned to the penthouse, they found the door ajar. Inside, the living room was a wreck, furniture overturned, shattered glass scattered across the floor. The words liar and fraud were spray-painted across the walls in dripping red paint. Emily's breath caught. A cold chill ran down her spine. This wasn't just a threat. This was a message. "Stay back," Alex ordered, stepping in front of her. He signaled to the security guards, who immediately swept through the penthouse, ensuring it was clear. But Emily knew this was just the beginning. Hawthorne wanted to break them, not just their reputation, but their spirit. "I'm sorry, Alex," she whispered that night, as they sat together on the untouched bed in the guest room, her room, the place where she had once hidden from the world. "Sorry?" he asked, his voice strained. "For what? For dragging you into this, for bringing my past into your life, for putting you in danger." He reached out, taking her hand in his. "You didn't drag me into anything. I chose this. I chose to stand with you, and I won't let him take that away." But the pressure only grew. Board members began to turn against Alex, fearing that his connection to Emily would ruin the company's fragile recovery. A few even resigned, joining Hawthorne's camp, spreading rumors about Alex's reckless decisions and emotional entanglements. One evening, Harold Bennett, their trusted lawyer, arrived at the penthouse, his expression grave. "I won't sugarcoat it," he said, sinking into one of the leather chairs. "Hawthorne's not just attacking your reputation. He's using his influence to pressure your investors. If we don't act fast, Coleman Media could collapse." Alex's jaw tightened. "What are our options?" Harold hesitated. "We could sever ties with Emily publicly, issue a statement claiming she misled you. It would stabilize the company, sir." "No!" Alex's voice was sharp. "That's not an option." Emily's heart twisted. "Alex, maybe he's right. Maybe if I just—" "No," Alex repeated, his gaze fierce. "This isn't just about the company. It's about us, about the truth. If we back down now, if we abandon each other, then Hawthorne wins." Harold nodded slowly, a faint smile of admiration touching his lips. "Then we fight. But we need more than just evidence. We need to change the narrative." Over the next few days, they launched a counter-offensive. Alex and Emily appeared together in a series of public interviews, sharing their story, the truth of how they met, the struggles they faced, the battle against Hawthorne's deceit. Emily's history as Phoenix, the fearless investigative journalist, became a symbol of courage, not shame. Viewers saw the woman who had risked everything to uncover the truth, who had stood beside Alex in the darkest of times. And they saw Alex, not as a cold, calculating CEO, but as a man who had chosen integrity over ambition, love over fear. Slowly, the tide began to turn. Messages of support flooded their social media accounts. Articles appeared, praising Emily's courage, questioning the credibility of the false accusations against her. But Hawthorne didn't give up. He launched his own smear campaign, flooding the internet with fabricated witnesses and anonymous claims. One night, as Emily and Alex sat together on the penthouse balcony, the city lights stretching out below them, Emily leaned against his shoulder. "I'm scared, Alex," she whispered. "What if we can't stop him?" He wrapped his arm around her, pulling her close. "Then we keep fighting, no matter what. Because the only way he wins is if we give up." A faint smile touched her lips. "I never thought I'd find someone willing to fight this battle with me." "You're not alone anymore," he whispered, his voice warm. "And you never will be." The city stretched out before them, glittering beneath the misty glow of the streetlights. The storm was far from over, but for the first time, Emily didn't feel like she was drowning. She felt anchored. Because in this war for the truth, she wasn't just a pawn, she wasn't just a contract wife, she was a warrior. And she wasn't fighting alone. Emily Parker stood in the center of the penthouse library, surrounded by scattered documents, her eyes scanning through the latest reports. Rain lashed against the tall glass windows, lightning casting brief flashes of light across the room. But the storm outside was nothing compared to the storm within her. Charles Hawthorne had struck back, and he had struck hard. The smear campaign against her had become relentless. Anonymous accusations, false stories painting her as a manipulative fraud, whispers of a scandalous past that never existed. Even the nickname Phoenix, once a symbol of her resilience, was twisted into a brand of shame. Emily knew the truth. She knew Hawthorne was behind it all. But knowing the truth wasn't enough. She had to prove it, and time was running out. "Emily?" Alex's voice pulled her from her thoughts. He stood in the doorway, his expression tense but determined. "Harold's here. He has a plan." She followed him to the living room, where Harold Bennett, their trusted lawyer, sat with a thick folder on his lap. His face was lined with concern, but his eyes still held that quiet spark of hope. "I won't waste your time," Harold began. "Hawthorne is using his influence to crush you, to discredit Emily, to isolate you, Alex, but he's making a mistake. He's overreaching." Alex frowned. "How?" "By turning this into a spectacle. By drawing so much attention to his lies, he's left himself exposed." Harold leaned forward, his voice urgent. "We're going to use his own weapon against him. We're going to make this fight even more public." Emily's stomach twisted. "You want to give him more attention?" "No," Harold corrected. "I want to give you more attention, the truth, your story. We go directly to the people, not just through the press, but through a live, unfiltered broadcast, a public interview where you lay everything out. Your history, your investigation, the evidence against Hawthorne. That's risky," Alex murmured. "If anything goes wrong, It won't," Harold insisted, "because the truth is on your side. And because, Emily, you're not just a target, you're a hero." Emily's breath caught. "I'm not a hero." "You are," Alex interjected, his voice firm. "You fought for the truth when no one else would. You didn't just save my company, you saved me. You saved us." Her gaze met his, a quiet warmth passing between them. But the fear remained. "And what if Hawthorne tries to stop us?" she asked. "He's not just going to sit back and watch this happen." Harold smiled faintly. "Let him try. We'll be prepared." Within hours, the plan was set into motion. A major news network agreed to host the live interview, promoting it as The Untold Story, The Phoenix Rises. The city buzzed with anticipation. Social media lit up with speculation. Was Emily Parker a fraud or a fighter? But even as they prepared for the broadcast, the pressure continued to mount. Alex received a call from one of the board members, an old friend who warned him that several investors were considering pulling out, afraid of the bad publicity. Emily received another anonymous message on her phone. "Back out now, or you'll regret it." That night, as she and Alex stood on the penthouse balcony, the city lights stretching out below them, she leaned against him, her head resting on his shoulder. "Do you ever wish you hadn't gotten involved with me?" she whispered. "Never," he replied, without hesitation. "If anything, I wish I'd known who you were from the start. I wouldn't have wasted so much time pretending not to care." She smiled faintly, but the fear lingered. "I'm scared, Alex. I'm scared of what he'll do. I'm scared of what he'll take from us." He wrapped his arm around her, holding her close. "He can't take the truth. And he can't take us, not unless we let him." The next morning dawned grey and cold. The interview was set for 8 p.m. Emily and Alex arrived at the studio in a black SUV, escorted by their security team. The studio was a bustling hive of activity, cameras being adjusted, producers giving instructions, a live audience filling the seats. Emily's heart pounded as she was led to the makeup room. The mirror reflected a woman she barely recognized. The same sharp blue eyes, the same determined expression, but beneath it all, a quiet vulnerability. "You don't have to do this alone," Alex whispered, standing behind her, his reflection appearing beside hers. "I know," she whispered. "But I do have to do this." Minutes later, she stepped onto the stage, the bright lights glaring down on her. The host, a seasoned journalist named Catherine Moore, greeted her with a warm smile. "Emily Parker, or should I say Phoenix," Catherine began, her voice clear and calm. "Tonight, the world will hear your story." The camera lights flashed red. They were live. Emily took a deep breath. "Thank you, Catherine, and thank you to everyone watching. I'm here tonight because there are things you deserve to know, not just about me, but about the fight for the truth." For the next hour, she laid it all out. Her past as an investigative journalist, the corruption she exposed, the enemies she made, how Charles Hawthorne had destroyed her life, driven her to the streets, and how she had risen again, only to find herself facing him once more. The audience sat in stunned silence, their eyes glued to the stage. But Emily didn't stop. She presented the evidence they had uncovered, the emails, the financial transactions, the false testimonies. She exposed Hawthorne's plot to destroy Coleman Media Group, his campaign of lies to ruin her, and then she told them about Alex, how he had chosen to stand with her even when the world turned against them. Catherine leaned forward, her expression intense. "Emily, why did you choose to fight back? Why not just disappear again?" "Because the truth matters," Emily replied, her voice steady. "Because if we let people like Hawthorne destroy lives without consequence, then what kind of world are we living in?" Applause erupted from the audience. Emily felt a rush of relief, a warmth spreading through her chest. She had done it. She had told her story. But even as the cameras turned off, even as Catherine thanked her with a warm hug, a quiet dread lingered. "Emily," Alex whispered, stepping onto the stage. "We need to go, now." He led her out of the studio, his hand gripping hers tightly. The security team escorted them to the SUV, but something felt wrong. As they pulled onto the street, the driver's voice crackled through the radio. "Sir, we're being followed." Alex's grip on Emily's hand tightened. "Get us out of here, now." The car sped through the rain-slicked streets, headlights flashing in the rearview mirror. Emily's heart raced. They had exposed the truth, but now they were exposed too. "Stay down," Alex whispered, his arm wrapping around her, pulling her close. The car swerved, the headlights drawing closer, and then a deafening crash. The SUV spun, metal crumpling, glass shattering. Emily's vision blurred, her ears ringing, Alex's voice fading in and out, and then darkness. Silence. In the chaos, one thought echoed in her mind. Hawthorne. He won't stop. He won't ever stop. Emily Parker's world was a blur of darkness, broken only by faint echoes, distant voices, sharp flashes of light, the cold sensation of rain against her skin. Pain radiated through her body, a dull, throbbing ache that seemed to pulse with every heartbeat. Somewhere, far away, she heard the faint sound of sirens wailing, growing louder with each passing second. Her eyes fluttered open, but her vision was a swirling haze. The scent of gasoline and scorched metal filled her senses. She tried to move, but a sharp pain shot through her side, stealing her breath. "Emily!" A voice cut through the fog. A voice she knew, warm, desperate. "Alex?" she whispered, her voice barely a rasp. "I'm here," he replied, his face appearing above her, streaked with dirt and blood, his grey-blue eyes filled with terror. "Stay with me. Help is coming." Are you okay?" she forced out, struggling to keep her eyes open. "I'm fine," he lied, his jaw tight. She could see the blood staining his sleeve, the gash on his forehead, but he didn't seem to care about his own pain, only hers. The sirens grew louder, and then blinding lights washed over them. Paramedics swarmed, hands pulling Alex away, guiding him to a stretcher. Another team worked to lift Emily, carefully strapping her to a gurney, her body screaming in pain with every movement. "Alex!" she called, panic surging through her. "Don't leave me!" "I'm right here," he shouted back, fighting against the paramedics who tried to tend to his wounds. I'm not leaving you, Emily. I won't. Those were the last words she heard before darkness claimed her once again. The world came back in fragments. The steady beep of a heart monitor, the sterile scent of antiseptic, the soft murmur of voices beyond a closed door. Emily's eyelids felt like lead, but she forced them open, blinking against the harsh fluorescent light. Hey, you're awake. Her gaze shifted, and she saw Alex sitting beside her bed, his face pale and lined with exhaustion. His arm was wrapped in a thick bandage, a bruise darkened his cheek, and a thin line of stitches crossed his forehead. But his eyes were clear, relief flooding them as he saw her. "Alex," she whispered, her voice raw. "I'm here," he said, leaning closer, his hand gently covering hers. "You're okay. You're safe." Memories flooded back, the crash, the blinding headlights, the feeling of weightlessness before the world shattered around them. "Hawthorne," she murmured, fear seizing her. He did this. He's trying to—" "I know," Alex interrupted, his voice calm but fierce. "But he didn't win. We survived. And the whole city knows it." Emily frowned. "What do you mean?" Alex smiled, though there was a hint of pain in his expression. "The broadcast. It went viral. Your story. Our fight, people are talking. They see Hawthorne for what he is. And the police, they know the crash wasn't an accident. They're investigating." Her heart raced. "But he'll fight back." "He won't stop." "No," Alex agreed, his hand tightening around hers. "But neither will we." Days blurred together as Emily recovered. The hospital room became her world. White walls, a small window overlooking the city, the steady hum of machines. But she wasn't alone. Alex was always there, never leaving her side, his presence a constant source of warmth and comfort. News continued to pour in. The police confirmed that the crash had been deliberate. The car that struck them was registered under a false name, but witnesses reported seeing a man fitting Hawthorne's description watching from a nearby alley. The investigation intensified, and the press latched onto the story. But even as the world rallied around them, a quiet fear remained. Emily knew Hawthorne was still out there, lurking in the shadows, waiting for his next move. One afternoon, as she lay staring out the window, a soft knock echoed from the door. "Come in," she called, her voice still weak. Harold Bennett stepped inside, his warm smile tinged with relief. "Well, you look better than the last time I saw you." "Harold," she breathed, a smile breaking through her exhaustion. "Are you okay? Did he come after you too?" "No," Harold assured her, taking a seat beside the bed. "I think his focus is singularly directed at you and Alex." "Lucky us," she muttered, but her smile didn't fade. "I won't stay long," Harold continued, his expression growing serious. "But I needed to tell you, the board is with you, most of them anyway. Hawthorne's allies are trying to stir up chaos, but your broadcast turned the tide." "People see you as a hero, Emily. The truth is on your side." "But it's not over, is it?" she asked, a quiet dread settling in her chest. "No," Harold admitted, "but you have allies now. People who will stand with you." As he stood to leave, he paused, a faint smile touching his lips. "And for what it's worth, I'm proud of you, both of you." After he left, Emily stared at the window, the city stretching out beneath a pale grey sky. Her heart ached with a strange mix of hope and fear. "Proud of us," she whispered, a faint smile playing at her lips. "Of course he is." Alex's voice came from the doorway. He stepped inside, a fresh cup of coffee in his good hand. "You're the bravest person I've ever met." She chuckled softly. "I'm lying in a hospital bed. Not exactly hero material." "You stood up to a monster," he countered, his gaze warm. "You told the world the truth. You saved my company, my life. You saved me." Silence settled between them, warm and tender. Alex reached out, gently brushing a strand of hair from her face. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "For what?" she asked, confusion flickering in her eyes. "For everything. For how I treated you in the beginning. For being so blind, so arrogant, for not seeing who you really were." A soft, sad smile touched her lips. "Maybe I didn't see myself either. Not until you believed in me." Their gazes locked, and in that moment, the walls around them seemed to melt away. It didn't matter that they were in a hospital, that the world outside was still a storm of chaos and danger. All that mattered was here, this quiet, fragile connection between them. "Emily," Alex whispered, leaning closer. "I love you." Her breath caught, tears filling her eyes. "I love you too." He leaned down, his lips brushing gently against hers, a soft, hesitant kiss that deepened, growing warm and tender. In that moment, all the fear, all the pain, melted away. But even as warmth filled her chest, a quiet dread lingered. Because she knew Hawthorne wasn't finished. And their fight was far from over. The crisp autumn air swept across the city, the golden leaves swirling in the wind as Emily Parker stood on the rooftop terrace of Coleman Media Group's headquarters. The city stretched out before her, a sea of silver and glass, glowing beneath the pale morning light. But beneath the beauty, a quiet tension gripped her chest. Charles Hawthorne had gone silent. After the crash, after the police launched their investigation, he had disappeared from the public eye. No more threats, no more smear campaigns, but Emily knew better. Men like Hawthorne didn't simply give up. They plotted, they waited, and they struck when least expected. Beside her, Alex Coleman leaned against the railing, his gaze fixed on the city. He seemed calm, but she knew the worry in his eyes, the constant vigilance that had become their new reality. "Do you think he's gone?" she whispered. "No," Alex replied, his voice steady. "He's waiting, watching, but he's running out of options. The board is with us. The police are closing in. His allies are turning on him." "But that makes him dangerous," Emily murmured. "A desperate man will do anything." Alex turned to her, his hand reaching for hers. "Then we stay ready. We protect each other. We don't give him the chance to strike." Suddenly, Alex's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, his expression darkening. "It's Harold." He says Hawthorne is making a final move, a press conference at his private estate. He's planning to twist the narrative, to paint us as the villains. Emily's chest tightened. "Of course he is. He's not just trying to save himself. He's trying to destroy us." But Alex's jaw tightened, his gaze sharpening. "Not this time." "We're not going to let him control the story." He turned, pulling out his own phone. "We're going to that press conference, but we're bringing our own cameras. Our own team. And this time, the world is going to hear the truth." An hour later, they arrived at Hawthorne's sprawling estate, a grand, ivy-covered mansion perched on the edge of a forest, the long driveway lined with towering oaks. A small crowd had already gathered outside the grand entrance, reporters, camera crews, photographers, all drawn by the promise of a scandalous showdown. Security guards lined the pathway, but they stepped aside as Alex and Emily approached. No one dared stop them, not after everything that had happened. Hawthorne stood at the top of the marble steps, dressed in a sharp, dark suit, his silver hair gleaming in the sunlight. His smile was cold, his gaze sharp as a blade. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced, his voice smooth and commanding, "thank you for coming. I stand before you today to set the record straight, to expose the lies, the manipulation, and the deceit that have been spread by Alex Coleman and his so-called wife." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Emily's heart raced, but she stood tall beside Alex. "Hawthorne!" Alex's voice rang out, cutting through the air. Stop hiding behind your lies. You think you can manipulate your way out of this? You think you can silence us? Hawthorne's smile didn't falter. Mr. Coleman, I don't need to silence you. Your own actions will speak for themselves. You used this woman, a con artist, a fraud, to deceive the world. Emily stepped forward, her voice clear, steady. The only fraud here is you, Charles. You tried to destroy us because we exposed the truth, because we stood up to you. Oh, Hawthorne sneered. And what truth is that, Miss Parker? That you're nothing but a failed journalist, a homeless vagrant who clawed her way into a billionaire's life? The reporter's camera zoomed in, the murmurs growing louder, but Emily didn't flinch. I was homeless because of you, she said, her voice rising. Because you destroyed my career, ruined my life. Because I uncovered the corruption you tried to bury. And now you're trying to do it again. But this time, you've lost. Hawthorne's smile twisted, a cold fury flashing in his eyes. You think anyone will believe you? I built this city's media empire. I am the truth. No, Alex said, stepping beside Emily. The truth is stronger than you, and it's already out. The police are investigating you. Your allies are abandoning you, and now the whole world is watching. At that moment, the sound of sirens echoed in the distance. Police cars pulled up along the driveway, officers stepping out, making their way toward the steps. Charles Hawthorne, one of the officers called out. We have a warrant for your arrest, for conspiracy, attempted murder, and obstruction of justice. Hawthorne's face paled. This is ridiculous. I am Charles Hawthorne. You're finished, Emily whispered, her voice calm, her gaze steady. Hawthorne's desperate rage turned to panic as the officers approached, pulling his arms behind his back, slapping handcuffs onto his wrists. The cameras flashed, the reporters shouting questions, the crowd pressing closer. But Emily and Alex stepped back, watching as the man who had once seemed invincible was led away, his voice fading beneath the chaos. Silence settled around them, a heavy, quiet peace. It's over, Alex whispered, his arm wrapping around Emily. She leaned against him, a soft, relieved laugh escaping her. It's really over. But even as relief washed over her, a quiet thought lingered in her mind. Not just relief, but pride. They hadn't just survived. They had won, and they had won together. As the sun began to set, casting a warm, golden light across the estate, Emily smiled. The phoenix had risen, and this time she wasn't alone.